Fuel is running out. Those were Amelia Earhart's final words crackling across the Pacific at 08:43 a.m. on July 2, 1937. So, what happened next? And just 4 minutes later, an unexplained blip flickered on coastal radar, then vanished, wiping every tracking record in its wake. In that instant, the world's most watched flight simply disappeared. Amelia Mary Earhart wasn't just another pilot. She was the first woman to cross the Atlantic solo, the face of American aviation, and a global icon who treated the sky as her neighborhood. When she and navigator Fred Noonan lifted their gleaming Lockheed Electra from Lae, New Guinea, they were 22,000 miles into a record-setting equatorial circumnavigation with only 7,000 miles left to go. Their next hop, Lae to tiny Howland Island, was 2,556 miles of open ocean, guided by radio bearings from the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca. But somewhere near the international dateline, radio bearings went fuzzy. Morse code drifted. Earhart's confident voice thinned to static. "We are on the line 157 to 337. We must be on you but cannot see you." Minutes later, "Fuel is running out." Silence. For 86 years, the mystery has spawned rival camps, crash and sink believers, Gardner Island castaway hunters, Japanese capture theorists, and secret spy mission advocates. Bones were found, lost, and re-examined. Underwater drones mapped miles of seafloor. Even modern facial recognition was applied to a blurry photograph from Saipan. Over the next 40 minutes, we'll retrace every pivotal moment. The last radio bearings, the Itasca's frantic smoke plumes, the failed message relays, and the storm cloud of speculation that followed. We'll overlay 1937 flight logs with satellite drift models, revisit neglected eyewitness diaries, and probe recently declassified wartime files. You'll see how a single map grid reference can redraw a search zone, and how a box of mislabeled bones might still speak in mitochondrial whispers. Stay with us, because each clue, no matter how small, narrows the ocean of possibilities. Amelia Earhart's story isn't done, and your insight might be the key that finally charts her last horizon. 2 days before takeoff, Lae Airfield throbbed with heat and prop wash. Amelia Earhart paced the steel mat runway in khaki slacks and a sweat-darkened flight jacket, eyes flicking from weather charts to her silver Lockheed Electra. Fred Noonan, map case under one arm, knelt beside the right wheel, penciling sun lines onto parchment. Mechanics topped the Electra's tanks with 1,100 U.S. gallons of 100-octane fuel, pushing the aircraft close to its 15,000-pound limit. To shave weight, Amelia agreed to leave behind a heavy life raft, gambling on calm seas and the Coast Guard cutter Itasca to cover any emergency. She kept a flare gun and a slim telescopic sight, ounces traded for miles. Radio operator Harry Balfour ran a final comms check. Earhart's voice rang clear on 3,105 kilohertz. The daytime 6,210 kilohertz channel fluttered, but held. Balfour's log, however, recorded a nagging glitch, receive hiss whenever both engines ran full rich. "We've flown half the world like that," Amelia joked, tapping the instrument panel. Meteorologist James Colopy predicted scattered cumulus to 8,000 feet and 10-mile visibility, but a low-pressure finger near Nukumanu could bloom into unexpected headwinds. Amelia penciled an alternate landing at Tarawa, 400 miles off course, insurance against the sky's fickle mood. By sundown on 1st July 1937, final paperwork lay signed. Departure 000 GMT, course 078 degrees true for 1,600 miles, then a slow swing to 067 degrees toward Howland's 1.6-mile coral strip. Estimated flight time, 18 hours. Noonan pre-marked dawn stars on his octant card, stuffed it into a weather-cracked case, and quipped, "Let's chase that sunrise." Amelia cabled her husband back home. "Radio's working, weather favoring, feeling fine." Next message, Howland. She slipped a silver friendship ring into her left glove, a quiet ritual before every long leg. At midnight exactly, ground crew swung flashlights in a wide arc. Twin Pratt & Whitney Wasps thundered alive. The Electra trembled down Lae's runway, heavy but resolute, wheels lifting free into the tropical dark. Below, Balfour raised a final hand. Those waving beams were the last human eyes to watch Amelia Earhart climb toward a dawn no one could follow. 90 minutes after departure, Amelia's first scheduled transmission crackled across 3,000 kilometers of salt air. Position roughly south of Nukumanu, altitude 10,000, sky overcast, she reported on 3105 kilohertz, voice steady but faint. Itasca's radio log stamped 0218 GMT. Sparks officer Leo Bellart's scribbled, strength 3, modulation good. He responded with bearing instructions, yet Earhart acknowledged nothing. An early sign the Electra's receiver might already be slipping into static. At 0345 GMT, Noonan shot his first celestial fix through a break in clouds. The octant reading placed them 20 miles left of track, so Amelia banked 5 degrees starboard, coaxing the Electra back toward the plotted 078-degree true. Fuel gauges dipped but remained on plan. Headwinds were lighter than feared. Below, the Pacific rolled ink black, broken only by moonlit ripples and pale cloud shadows. Dawn painted the horizon apricot. At 0512 GMT, Earhart transmitted, "Sunrise, 291 degrees, a standard line of position call." Itasca triangulated the signal, azimuth 337 degree. The cutter's crew lit a black powder smoke plume, a towering gray finger meant to guide Amelia visually. But at 10,000 feet and 60 miles distance, the plume was nothing but a ghost in haze. 7 hours in, the Electra crossed the equator. Engineers droned a metronome beat. Noonan recalculated drift, taping revised headings to the dashboard. Twice he attempted Morse on 500 kilohertz. Both times Itasca heard nothing. At 0742 GMT, Amelia's voice burst through the carrier wave. "We must be on you, but cannot see you. Gas is running low." Her tone clipped, urgent. Bellart's answered with a string of long dashes, signal for radio bearing. But again she gave no Roger, no key clicks, only silence. 4 minutes later, 7:46 GMT, Itasca's RDF scope registered a hazy lobe on 157 337 degree, then the trace vanished. Back in the cockpit, fuel pressure needles quivered near red. Noonan penciled a last course, search north-south along 157 337 sunline, banking and expanding zigzags. Amelia's final spoken words arrived at 0843 GMT. "Fuel is running out." Then the radio cut to background hiss, like wind through empty antenna wire. Somewhere below, Howland's coral runway waited unseen. Above, the Electra vanished into brightening sky. Lieutenant Cooper, commanding the cutter Itasca, stared at the silent speaker, his pencil hovering above the logbook. 0844 GMT. No follow-up call, no Morse burst, no carrier whistle. He ordered full power to the radio room and full steam ahead on a creeping line search. Smoke signal canisters hissed skyward, but the horizon remained stubbornly blank. Inside 20 minutes, Itasca reached Amelia's last triangulated sunline, engines churning frothy wakes in perfect grids. Topsiders peered through binoculars for silver metal or bobbing debris. None appeared. Back at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Orrin Murfin convened an emergency task force. He diverted the battleship USS Colorado and the carrier USS Lexington from exercises near Midway, instructing them to steam south at flank speed. Overnight, the Navy committed more resources than any peacetime rescue in Pacific memory. 4,000 men, 200 sailors scouring charts, 20 aircraft prepped for dawn lattice flights. Newspapers flashed extra editions. Earhart missing. Crowds gathered outside storefront radios for hourly bulletins, anxious for any word. By 10 GMT, Itasca's officers logged 22 deadheads, floating palm trunks mistaken for wreckage. An oil slick 5 miles north tested positive for diesel, not aviation fuel. Frustration mounted. Radio operators spun dial faces raw, sweeping every kilocycle. At 12:32 GMT, Sparksman Leo Bellart's caught faint voice fragments. Could be Amelia, could be static. The phrase, "Southwest," surfaced too garbled to save. Boatswain Smith scrawled, "Possible position 281 degrees T, 200 miles, they reset search bearings, but fuel drums on deck sloshed lower each hour, forcing shorter sweeps. 2 days later, Lexington launched 12 scout planes at first light. Pilots flew racetrack patterns at 1,500 feet, scanning turquoise shallows for aluminum glint. They found nothing but hammerhead shadows and whitecap crests. In Washington, President Roosevelt authorized $250,000 for continued search, an unprecedented figure. But by July 19th, the Navy's aerial grid had covered 250,000 square miles without a whisper of the Electra. Coffers dwindled. Crew morale sagged. Radios hissed their endless ocean static. On July 21st, Admiral Murfin signaled Itasca, "Suspend air search. Continue surface patrol until further orders." The cutter cut engines to half speed, prowling alone across widening silence. Hope had not died, but it was treading water in a vast Pacific void, waiting for a miracle or for history to decide the rest. 3 years passed before the mystery stirred again. On Gardner Island, a wind-swept coral speck in the Phoenix chain, 350 miles southeast of Howland. In September 1940, British colonial officer Gerald Gallagher received word from island laborers. Human bones lay scattered beneath a wren tree on the island's western reef flat. Gallagher sailed over, picked through sun-bleached fragments, a skull without mandible, a humerus, a tibia, plus remnants of a woman's size 7 shoe, and a rusted sextant box stamped SN 3500. He radioed headquarters. "Believe bones of female castaway. Stop. Send medical authority." London replied, "Secure remains in a box, forward to Fiji for examination." Dr. David Hoodless, a pathologist in Suva, laid the 13 bones on green felt. Measuring cranial breadth and femur length, he concluded, most likely male, stocky European. He sealed the bones in a locker. Files labeled them insignificant. Yet the sextant serial nagged. Amelia's navigator, Fred Noonan, once logged a sextant 1542. 3,500 sat just 2 digits off an alternate Electra kit run. The bones vanished during wartime relocations, dismissed as colonial detritus. Decades later, retired Air Force officer Tom King unearthed Gallagher's telegrams while sifting dusty archives. King notified Tigar, a nonprofit obsessed with Earhart's fate. Their 1998 expedition returned to the Wren Tree site, now dense with Scaevola scrub and ghost crabs. Archaeologists unearthed a woman's compact rouge mirror, a 1930s beechnut chewing gum jar, and fragments of aircraft-grade aluminum used as makeshift cutting tools. No definitive tail number, just whispers of survival ingenuity. Back in Fiji, modern forensic anthropologist Karen Burns reevaluated Hoodless's bone measurements from the original notes. Using computer regression, she argued the skeleton fitted a tall female of Northern European ancestry, Earhart's exact profile. Critics countered. Statistical back calculation on lost bones proved nothing. But in 2018, Oxford's Dr. Richard Jantz applied 3D morphometric modeling to the same data and declared a 99% likelihood the bones belonged to Amelia. Yet, without the actual skeleton, proof remained elusive. Gardner Island offered tantalizing echoes, not certainties. Still, each relic, sextant box, rouge compact, aluminum shard, nudged investigators closer to a castaway narrative. Perhaps Earhart didn't drown quickly. Perhaps she endured weeks, signaling futilely toward empty sky. While the castaway hypothesis gathered sand and sextant clues on Gardner, another story grew louder across the Pacific, that Earhart and Noonan had fallen into Japanese hands. In 1943, an American Marine private named Howard Hanslick wrote home from newly liberated Saipan, claiming island elders spoke of a tall white woman and thin white man, flown in under guard 6 years earlier. Rumors said they were interrogated, then spirited away to Tokyo, their fate a military secret. Similar tales surfaced from other GIs who raided Japanese administrative buildings. One swore he saw a grainy photo of Earhart, hands bound, in an intel file marked Toku Top Secret. These accounts reached Washington. Navy intelligence quietly dispatched Captain Wallace Babe Short to canvass Saipan in 1946. Short's report, declassified only in 1988, details an elderly fisherman who described a twin-engine plane ditching near Mili Atoll in July 37. Islanders towed the wreckage ashore, Japanese officers crated the engines and hauled the fuselage onto a barge bound north. Short photographed rusted radial cylinders matching Pratt & Whitney Wasp models. Engines later disappeared into a Yokosuka warehouse, their serial plates chiseled off. Skeptics argued eyewitness memory warps under occupation trauma. Yet in 1966, journalist Fred Gerner interviewed former Japanese radio operator Toshiaki Fukuzawa, who claimed he intercepted distress calls on 6,200 kHz from a female pilot speaking English. His log entry dated 3 July 1937, 12 hours after Earhart's last confirmed transmission. Gerner's best-selling book, The Search for Amelia Earhart, ignited mainstream fascination, but historians dismissed it as anecdotal montage. Still, artifacts trickled in. A Kokubunji scrapyard dealer produced a fragmentary airframe tag stamped 10E601, tantalizingly close to Earhart's Lockheed designation. Chain of custody proved murky. Critics labeled it souvenir fraud. Even so, U.S. archivists scouring post-war interrogation transcripts located a single line in Naval Intelligence File NR-77. Female flyer in custody, South Seas. Context missing, page partially burned. By the 1990s, the capture theory split into factions. One positing execution on Saipan, another suggesting Tokyo ransom negotiations stalled by Roosevelt's cabinet. No paperwork closed the loop, but the whispers refused to die, fueled by widowers, pensioners, and aging code clerks who insisted they'd once glimpsed Amelia alive behind enemy shutters. Each testimonial bent under scrutiny yet refused to break, leaving investigators to weigh oral echoes against physical voids. No bones, no barrels of electrometal, just stories riding Pacific trade winds, stories powerful enough to keep an alternative fate aloft long after the engines went silent. A third narrative emerged in the Cold War haze of the 1960s. Amelia Earhart, darling of American aviation, had been on a clandestine reconnaissance run for the U.S. government. Advocates pointed to her close friendship with George Putnam and White House insiders, and to cables between the Navy and the Department of the Interior, hinting at photographic objectives near Truk Lagoon, then a fortified Japanese stronghold. In 1967, former Navy Captain Paul Briand published Daughter of the Sky, citing unnamed Pentagon sources who claimed Earhart's Electra carried a belly-mounted Fairchild F8 camera. The theory held that after photographing Japanese airfields, she was instructed to ditch near the Gilberts and rendezvous with an American submarine. But misnavigation, radio failure, or detection by Japanese patrol boats forced an emergency landing and subsequent capture. Most historians scoffed. No manifest lists a camera pod, and Lockheed engineers insisted the Electra's belly lacked structural fittings for such gear. Yet FOIA requests in the 1990s uncovered partial memos from the Office of Naval Intelligence referencing AE flight as cover for callsign testing. Though redacted, the timing aligned with Earhart's world flight. In 2002, journalist Randall Brink obtained a declassified OSS memorandum dated March 1937. Recommend OP Oxford employ civilian asset for aerial survey of Japanese mandates. Female pilot enjoys wide press cover, activity unlikely to arouse suspicion. The memo never names Earhart, but context is hard to ignore. Only one female pilot planned to cross that sector that year. Skeptics counter with logistics. Extra camera weight would require additional fuel, yet Earhart stripped the Electra to stay airborne. Spy mission believers reply that her unusual fuel load out of lay, slightly above the published capacity, hints at hidden ballast for covert equipment later dumped mid-flight. The CIA publicly denies involvement. A 2015 statement reads, "No agency records substantiate covert directives related to Amelia Earhart." Nonetheless, the National Archives reveal 3 still classified boxes labeled Pacific Aerial Intel 1937. Their contents remain sealed, citing national security exemptions. Whether propaganda, legend, or sliver of truth, the spy mission theory thrives because it offers motive. A heroic icon, risking everything for intelligence crucial to looming war. And until the last redacted page sees daylight, the idea that Amelia flew not just for fame, but for country will keep conspiracy embers glowing, fueled by secrecy's irresistible allure. By the 21st century, Gardner Island's sun-bleached bones had become legend, but legend alone could not close a file. Enter Dr. Richard Jantz, emeritus anthropologist at the University of Tennessee's famed Body Farm. In 2018, he fed David Hoodless's original 1940 bone measurements, femur length, humerus diameter, cranial index, into 4DISC, a modern morphometric program built from thousands of digitized skeletons. The output stunned skeptics. Probability 0.994 that the bones belong to a white female between 5'7" and 5'9", Amelia's exact listed height. Jantz published in Forensic Anthropology declaring Hoodless was wrong. The bones fit Earhart better than 99% of individuals in our reference sample. Detractors howled. Without the physical bones, they argued, measurements could be off by millimeters, skewing algorithms. Jantz countered with robustness tests. Even adding 3 millimeters error, the result stayed female. Meanwhile, Oxford isotope chemists tested phosphate from Gardner's coconut-rich soil and matched it to nitrogen ratios typical of castaway diets, supplementing the theory Amelia survived weeks, perhaps months, eating shellfish and drinking scant rainwater pooled in coral cracks. Technologists joined the fray. Penn State's Visual Computing Lab applied photogrammetry to archival Electra parts. An aluminum latch plate found on Gardner fit Lockheed's landing gear door schematics within 0.5 millimeter. On the reverse, engineers spotted faint heat stress marks, suggesting an emergency belly landing across the island's flat coral reef. Skeptics pointed out the plate's rivet pattern could match any 1930s aircraft, but Lockheed archivists produced manufacturing roll 406S. Only the 10 Electras built for transoceanic range used that exact pattern, and only one of those flew the Pacific Equator route in 1937. The castaway narrative now boasted intersecting vectors: bones matching Amelia's stature, aluminum matching her airframe, and island chemistry matching a last survival diet. Still, without DNA, conclusive proof lingered just beyond reach. TGAR launched fundraising for a new expedition with ground-penetrating radar and canine cadaver teams trained to smell centuries-old human decay. As equipment crates loaded onto the charter vessel, expedition leader Rick Gillespie vowed, "This time we either find her or eliminate Gardner forever." Hope, skepticism, and science set sail together. One more shot at unearthing Amelia's silent witness beneath coral rubble. While Gardner expeditions scraped coral for castaway clues, oceanographers aimed sonar at the abyss near Howland Island, gambling that if Earhart missed the reef, her Electra sank almost intact. In 2009, Nauticos Corporation and Phoenix International teamed with the Discovery Channel, towing a multi-beam array across 1,500 square miles of seafloor. The display lit up like static snow, lava pillows, silt dunes, wrecked fishing trawlers, but no clean, aircraft-sized silhouette. Engineers flagged one L-shaped return 80 meters long. Hopes soared, then sank, a volcanic dike. Next came Robert Ballard, the Titanic hunter. In 2019, his EV Nautilus departed Samoa with Remus drones loaded for 6,000-meter dives. Ballard's logic: if Earhart ditched, currents would sweep the Electra downhill into the Nautilus' deep trench, 18,000 feet below. Cameras dropped. Hours of black water rolled past brittle stars and glass sponges until a silver glint filled the monitor, only to morph into manganese-coated cable from a 1980s telecom project. Ballard radioed the surface, voice flat. "Another maybe, not Our Lady." Funding dried up. The expedition logged negative, yet tech marched on. In 2021, startup Deep Blue Hyperspectral launched AUVs with AI object recognition. Algorithms trained on 1930s Lockheed blueprints could flag rivet spacing through sediment fuzz. On Dive 4, the AI pinged an anomaly matching Electra tailplane geometry, 4.5 meter span, right angles, crisp against fluted seafloor. Team members high-fived in the dark control room. But retrieval ROV found only a World War II depth charge casing half buried beside coral fans. Costs spiraled. Each 24-hour dive burned $100,000. Investors wanted closure or scrap. Then, 2023, OceanGate Expeditions repurposed a lithium-driven submersible, fitted with magnetometers tuned to Lockheed's aluminum-copper alloy. 10 miles north of Howland, magnet spikes danced, 155 microteslas above baseline. The sub dropped, floodlights piercing silt haze. A skeletal frame emerged. Tubular spars, torn control cables, a twisted prop spinner, not the Electra. Data plates read Douglas C-47, lost in 1944. Another mystery solved, but not Amelia's. As sonar wakes faded, debate hardened. Crash and Sink had consumed 15 years and $12 million with zero Electra metal. Critics declared the ocean theory bankrupt. Proponents countered the search box must widen. Earhart's last horizon still beckoned, a silence larger than sonar pings, waiting for one definitive echo to answer an 86-year-old question. Even as deep-sea sonar crews peeled cables from sea fans, data scientists on dry land turned to the sky, not for planes, but for currents. In 2020, oceanographer Dr. Dana Kelso fed Amelia's last known coordinates, Itasca's wind logs, and 80 years of Pacific current data into a satellite-validated drift model used to track tsunami debris. Her supercomputer simulated 10 million Electra float scenarios, 92% beached wreckage within 800 kilometers of Howland in less than 6 months, but 8% rode the north equatorial countercurrent southwest, straight toward Nikumaroro, Gardner's colonial name. Critics scoffed. Currents shift, but aluminum corrodes. Why no large debris field washed ashore? Kelso countered with thermodynamic decay models. In warm, oxygen-rich Pacific water, thin aircraft skin pits to fishnet lace inside a decade. What would reach shore in 1938 could be unrecognizable scrap by 1940. That same year, NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab released declassified spy-sat photographs from 1965, part of the Cold War Corona program. Among them, a grainy frame of Gardner revealed a slender, dark streak off the northwest reef, 30 meters long, shaped eerily like a fuselage. Shadows hinted at twin vertical fins, the Electra's tail signature. Tiger analysts pixel-stacked the image, enhancing contrast until rivet-like dots teased the eye. Detractors called it pareidolia. The fuselage measured too long by 5 meters, yet Lockheed blueprints show that, broken at the forward bulkhead, the Electra's tail could splay outward, exaggerating length. Meanwhile, NOAA's seabed mapping team reprocessed multi-beam data from Ballard's 2019 dives using machine learning noise filters unavailable at the time. Hidden in the raster tail, an object with consistent 2.0-meter rib spacing, matching the Electra's wing structure, appeared 200 meters downslope from Ballard's search box. The discovery electrified forums. Ballard admitted his crew never saw that grid, owing to software thresholds set to ignore small protrusions. NOAA plans a 2025 return with higher resolution LiDAR. Each new dataset, drift algorithms, spy-sat shadows, AI-filtered bathymetry, converged like faint stars into a single constellation pointing again at Gardner. For the first time, theories were not trading anecdotes but stacking modern physics atop archival whispers. Yet proof remained an asymptote. Always closer, never touching. The Pacific kept her secrets just beyond the reach of charts and code, daring the next expedition to draw a final line in saltwater and say, "Here, she is here." Newsreels of the search flickered through 1930s cinemas, and America's sweetheart froze forever in silver nitrate. Over 8 decades, her image rebooted with each new medium. Television recycled the last runway footage. Amelia climbing into the cockpit, scarf whipping sideways, every July anniversary. In the 90s, internet forums spawned endless theory threads. In 2010, #FindAmelia trended the day Google Earth pranksters marked Electra-shaped reefs. Earhart became shorthand for fearless wanderer, corporate glass ceiling mascot, even feminist NFT art. Her face adorned U.S. postage and a Barbie doll. High schoolers wearing bomber jackets recited her quote, "Adventure is worthwhile in itself," without knowing she wrote it on hotel stationery in Dakar while sipping black tea. Yet away from pop culture, Earhart's relatives carried a quieter weight. In Kansas, great-niece Amy Klepner kept Amelia's childhood scrapbook sealed in a climate-controlled chest. Pages of pressed prairie flowers, Morse practice lines, and a clipped cartoon of a girl leaping off a barn roof with an umbrella. When expedition news cycles surge, reporters call at dawn asking for family reaction. Amy answers politely, then wanders to the attic, sliding a gloved hand across that cedar lid, debating whether to reopen the past another time. Fred Noonan's descendants feel a different absence. His grandnephew, Tom Noonan, installs maritime radar in Florida and hates July interviews. He shrugs when asked about spy missions, but lights up describing Fred's love for spherical trigonometry, how he taught ship cadets to find Hawaii with a wristwatch and rising moon. Tom mailed Tigar a weathered navigation ruler inscribed FJN, refusing payment. Use it to finish what he started. School children still write letters to Amelia. The Smithsonian stores thousands. Crayon drawings of silver planes. Questions like, "Did you see mermaids?" Curators select 10 each year to display beside the Electra's preserved propeller. Visitors pause, read a 7-year-old's shaky script, "I hope you got to the stars," and dab their eyes. For the families, every new sonar ping or bone report stirs that strange blend of hope and dread. Hope for confirmed rest, dread of another near miss. Each headline reopens waiting rooms of the soul, where closure is an infinite layover, and grief taxis the runway, but never quite lifts into peace. In early 2024, the Gardner hypothesis gained its boldest backer yet when billionaire technologist Maya Raines pledged $10 million for a no-excuses search. Her company, Selene Robotics, shipped 2 autonomous crawler drones, each the size of a golf cart, equipped with LiDAR, subsurface radar, and AI image recognition, to comb every meter of Nikumaroro's reef shelves. The drones carried pressurized coring arms capable of drilling coral heads for trace aluminum and human keratin. Shipping containers stacked with solar arrays and Starlink dishes turned the uninhabited atoll into a floating research hub, complete with a live stream countdown banner. Finding Amelia, Day 1. Critics bristled. Maritime archaeologist Dr. Isla Bennett argued that cratering coral for celebrity closure risked destroying World War II heritage scattered nearby. Environmental NGOs warned of sea turtle nesting disruption. Twitter thundered with #SaveNikumaroro. Raines countered by hiring conservation experts, pledging reef restoration funds, and streaming nightly Q&A sessions from the deck of her support vessel Eventide. "If we can land a rover on Mars," she said, "we can answer an 86-year-old question without wrecking a beach." Funding dramas played out in boardrooms too. The U.S. National Science Foundation declined a grant proposal to model post-crash drift because privately funded redundancy risks starving broader ocean current research. Undeterred, Raines partnered with NOAA's Okeanos Explorer program, offering to share terabytes of seabed scans in exchange for a narrow study corridor around Gardner. Bureaucrats argued jurisdiction. Lawyers drafted 50-page memoranda. Meanwhile, a parallel faction championed the Saipan capture theory. Historian Alex Takahashi crowdfunded $750 to digitize Imperial Japanese military archives, newly accessible after a long-awaited declassification push. Within weeks, his team uncovered a ledger noting 2 foreigners, aircraft debris crate 12, shipped Yokosuka, 737s. The entry lacked names, but its timing fanned social media fires. Castaway advocates dismissed it as supplier code. Capture theorists called it the smoking gun. As rival expeditions raced, one drilling reef ledges, the other scanning microfilmed kanji, the debate spilled onto nightly news panels. Was the quest finally closing in, or were researchers chasing mirages conjured by hope and deep pockets? What remained certain was that Amelia Earhart still commanded armies of believers, skeptics, and dreamers, each staking fortunes and reputations on a woman who once said adventure was its own reward. As the high-tech rover wheels gnawed coral on Nikumaroro's reef shelf, Selene Robotics streamed real-time sonar slices. Night after night, viewers watched gray pixels scroll until a rectangular void, 1.9 meters wide, 5 meters long, appeared at 8 meters depth. The comment section exploded. The fuselage, but dawn diving revealed a coral coffin, hollowed by parrotfish, not aluminum. Raines's livestream count ticked to day 47, with no smoking rivet. Critics tweeted, $10 million fish tank. Simultaneously, Takahashi's Tokyo team fed optical character recognition into thousands of wartime pages. The ledger's "Two Foreigners" line cross-referenced a warehouse receipt listing aircraft salvage, Phoenix 1, ambiguity, weaponized. Capture theorists claimed Phoenix equaled Gardner, transshipped via the Marshalls to Yokosuka. Castaway advocates retorted Phoenix was also a code name for codebreak gear. Context mattered. Academic journals filled special issues dissecting one handwritten kanji stroke, curving a fraction left or right, proof of Amelia, or proof of nothing. In Cambridge, isotope geochemists reran Gardner soil samples, this time with laser ablation ICP-MS. Trace strontium ratios matched Kansas prairie signatures, Earhart's childhood diet imprint. Yet skeptics replied, missionary gardens imported Midwestern soil in the 1920s. Coincidence. Meanwhile, NOAA's reprocessed sonar hinted at an L-shaped debris field, 4 kilometers north of Howland. Crash and sinkers cheered. But when the coordinates were checked against historical charts, the spot lay within a 1971 barge dump zone. Old refrigerators, maybe, not propellers. Media stitched these contradictions into primetime drama. 3 theories, 0 answers. Talk shows pitted Gardner explorer against Saipan archivist, each armed with artifacts and probability graphs. Ratings soared. Clarity sank. Families felt whiplash. Amy Klepner paused interviews, saying, "Every new clue reopens every old wound." Tom Noonan mailed scientists a note, "Call me when you're sure." Yet the paradox fueled curiosity. Every failed proof birthed finer tools, sharper data. Each stalemate raised the bar for evidence. Not just a scrap of metal, but serial-numbered alloy. Not just a story, but forensic timestamps. Amelia's riddle persisted because it balanced forever on the edge of solvability. Close enough to taste, elusive enough to chase. In that tension lived the enduring power of unanswered adventure, the very spark that had lifted the Electra into darkness back in 1937. While explorers sparred over sonar pings and kanji ledgers, lawmakers noticed the escalating race and its collateral costs. In March 2025, the U.S. House Committee on Science opened hearings titled Earhart and Edge Cases, Who Owns Lost History? Raines testified first, defending her reef drilling permits and promising full habitat restoration. Guam delegate Javier Cruz pressed harder. If private dollars damage public heritage, should taxpayers foot the rescue? Raines countered by releasing her raw data to the NOAA Open Archive, an unprecedented dump of terabytes now free to marine researchers. Across the Pacific, Kiribati issued emergency regulations limiting foreign subsurface sampling within its exclusive economic zone, sparked by photos of coral cores stacked like ivory tusks on Eventide's deck. Environmental NGOs celebrated, while archaeologists worried new red tape would freeze legitimate digs. Meanwhile, Japan's National Diet debated a bill to digitize every imperial archive by 2030, partly to quell capture theory conspiracy. Takahashi's crowdfunding success had embarrassed ministries by proving that internet sleuths could outpace state archivists. Insurance underwriters also adjusted risk tables. After OceanGate's 2023 false alarm, Lloyd's of London tripled premiums on deep ocean aviation hunts, citing event-driven investor impatience. Suddenly, crash and sink expeditions faced $2 million in upfront guarantees. Gardner teams, working in knee-deep lagoons, became the cheaper bet, skewing future funding toward shallows over abyss. Academia split on whether to chase or pause. MIT's Ocean Systems Lab proposed a final mission using an under-ice neutrino detector repurposed for saltwater aluminum signatures. Cost, $80 million. The National Science Foundation postponed review, urging societal consensus. In response, 5 universities launched the Earhart Ethics Roundtable, drafting a charter, public data release within 6 months of collection, mandatory cultural impact studies, restorative reef budgets pegged to expedition tonnage. For Earhart's relatives, policy sparring felt surreal. Amy Klepner told reporters, "Grand Aunt Amelia flew for freedom of the sky. She'd hate lawyers grounded in paperwork." Yet even she acknowledged regulation might protect fragile atolls and archival pages alike. As new guardrails settled into place, the hunt's future appeared paradoxically clearer and more constrained. Technology could now laser scan coral pores or parse gigabytes of war memos overnight, but only if permits, insurance, and public trust aligned. Amelia's riddle thus entered its next phase, not merely a quest for evidence, but a test of how far society will bend rules, budgets, and ethics to reclaim one woman's vanished horizon. The Pacific still whispers with unanswered coordinates, but Amelia Earhart's reach has already crossed every border of time. Her empty cockpit became an amphitheater where science, myth, law, and imagination argue their cases, and in that debate lies her greatest legacy, a relentless push to know more. Each sonar sweep refines mapping software later used for tsunami prediction. Every archival digitization rescues other forgotten voices from mold and war-scar charcoal. The hunt for one pilot has upgraded the planet's toolbox for finding everyone else. For aviators, Earhart remains the beacon on descent checklists. Stay curious, stay bold. Women in flight schools still tap her autograph before exams. Commercial captains keep her photo in cockpit binders. In 2024, NASA engineers etched her initials onto the casing of the Artemis III lunar lander, a wink to the next frontier she never saw, but surely imagined. Yet her story endures because it isn't neat. It's a living cliffhanger narrated by ocean currents, coral polyps, war vaults, and cloud servers. Whether she perished as a castaway under Gardner's wren trees, as a prisoner on Saipan, or sank silently near Howland, the uncertainty itself is a lighthouse, warning against easy answers, inviting new explorers to relight the beam. So, where do we go from here? If you believe the final chapter is still unwritten, you can help. Share this video. Every viewer adds more eyes to fresh evidence and old archives. Donate or volunteer. Support vetted organizations like Project Recover or Tiger that merge science with preservation. Preserve family records. Old letters, photos, and logbooks may hold overlooked clues. Digitize and submit them to crowdsourced history hubs. Advocate ethically. Urge institutions to balance open data with environmental and cultural respect, ensuring future searches enrich rather than exploit. Adventure, Amelia once wrote, is worthwhile in itself. By that measure, every chart plotted, every coral core sampled, every declassified memo scanned, has already honored her creed. The Pacific's answer may surface tomorrow or linger another century, but the pursuit has forever sharpened our instruments and our sense of wonder. If Amelia Earhart's spirit stirs you to keep exploring the unanswered, subscribe, join the discussion, and share what you know. One fragment, one coordinate, one voice could finally complete the loop she began that July dawn in 1937. Thank you for watching. See you on the next horizon.